a cold, isolated farmstead in the Bavarian countryside. March 1922. Snow still clings to the ground. The wind howls between the trees like something alive, something hungry. The place is called Hinterkaifeck, a modest farm 43 miles north of Munich, far from any neighbor, far from help. The family living there, 63-year-old Andreas Gruber, a hard, suspicious man, his 72-year-old wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter, 35-year-old Victoria Gabriel, Victoria's 7-year-old daughter, little Cecilia, and 2-year-old Joseph, the baby of the house. They had just hired a new maid, 44-year-old Maria Baumgartner. It was her very first day. But something was already wrong at Hinterkaifeck. 6 months earlier, the previous maid had fled in terror. She told anyone who would listen that the house was haunted. She heard heavy footsteps every night, coming from the attic. Slow, deliberate steps across the wooden boards above her room. She felt eyes watching her in the dark. Doors that were locked would creak open at midnight. She begged Andreas to investigate. He laughed at her, but Andreas stopped laughing soon enough. In the weeks before the murders, strange things began happening again. Footprints appeared in the snow, leading from the edge of the dark woods straight to the farm, but never leading back out. Someone, or something, had walked to the house and simply vanished. Andreas found a strange newspaper in the barn that no one in the family had bought. Tools went missing, and then reappeared in places they didn't belong. At night, the family heard footsteps in the attic once more. Andreas climbed the ladder with a lantern. He searched every corner. Nothing. No one. Yet the footsteps continued. On the evening of March 31st, 1922, the horror truly began. One by one, the killer, or whatever it was, lured the family into the barn. First Victoria, then her elderly mother, Cecilia, then Andreas, then little 7-year-old Cecilia. They were slaughtered with a mattock, a heavy farming tool like a pickaxe. Brutal, crushing blows to the skull. Skulls cracked open, faces shattered. The sound of bone breaking echoed in that cold barn. The little girl, young Cecilia, didn't die quickly. She lay among the bodies of her family, pulling at her own hair in agony, gasping for hours before death finally took her. Later that night, the killer walked back into the house. Maria Baumgartner, the new maid who'd only been there one day, was murdered in her bed. The same mattock split her head open while she slept, or tried to. Finally, the baby, 2-year-old Joseph, was killed in his crib with a single devastating blow to the face. Then, the unthinkable happened. The killer did not leave. For the next 3 or 4 days, someone or something stayed at Hinterkaifeck. They fed the cows, they milked them, they cooked meals in the kitchen. They even ate the family's food. Neighbors later remembered seeing smoke rising from the chimney, lights moving behind the windows. The dogs were fed, the animals were cared for, while the bodies of the Gruber family lay stacked in the barn like cordwood, covered in hay. When the bodies were finally discovered on April 4th, the scene was beyond nightmare. The 4 in the barn were piled on top of each other. Blood had soaked deep into the floorboards. The little girl's hands were still tangled in her own torn hair. Inside the house, Maria and baby Joseph lay where they had been struck down. The police were stunned. No murder weapon was ever found. No clear motive. Footprints led only toward the farm, never away. But the most chilling detail came from the investigation itself. Neighbors and witnesses swore they had seen the family after the murders. Smoke from the chimney, someone tending the animals, a figure moving behind the curtains at night. Some locals whispered that the previous maid had been right all along. The house was haunted. They said an evil presence had been living in the attic for months, watching, waiting, learning the family's routines. A restless spirit, or something far darker, something that needed to feed. After the murders, the hauntings did not stop. For years afterward, people who passed near the abandoned farm reported hearing children crying in the barn at night, heavy footsteps crossing the attic, the sound of a mattock striking wood over and over. Some claimed to see the ghostly figure of a little girl standing at the edge of the woods, hair torn and matted with blood, staring toward the house as if still waiting for her mother. They saw the entire family, Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, the children, walking silently across the fields at dusk, carrying on with their chores, as if they never realized they were dead. In the decades that followed, the farm fell into ruin, but the stories grew darker. Investigators who spent the night there reported sudden drops in temperature, whispered voices calling their names from the attic. One officer swore he felt a cold hand brush his neck while he stood alone in the barn. Even today, over 100 years later, the case remains unsolved. No one was ever charged. Was the killer a vengeful neighbor? A stranger hiding in the attic for days? Or was it something that had never been human at all? Some believe the Gruber family disturbed an ancient evil on the lonely plot of land, and the entity finally claimed them. Others say the ghost of the previous maid's warnings were real, and the thing in the attic simply grew tired of watching. Gravekeeper. If you ever find yourself in the quiet Bavarian countryside and you come across an old, forgotten farm with a creaking attic, listen carefully. If you hear slow footsteps above you at night, if you see footprints in the snow that only lead toward the house, run. Because whatever walked those floors in 1922 may still be waiting, still hungry, still watching from the dark, and it has had a very, very long time to learn how to lure its next victims.